Alrighty, guys, this is going to be the Module 4 lecture. We're going to cover formatting our output. We're going to cover dictionaries and lists. All right, so first things first, we're going to talk about formatting our output. And what I mean by this is if you have a float value, a number with decimal places, you can tell Python how many decimal places you want to display. You can also put dollar signs in front of your money values, and it's just overall a lot easier to print and display information using what we call an F string. All right, so let's take a look. I've got two variables here. I've got a variable called cost, and its value is the integer 2. And then I have a variable called many decimals, and it's a float value, right? Because it has all these places after the decimal. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you guys how to print these two variables using what I call, or what we call, the F string. All right, F string just stands for formatted string. So right here, I have the way we've been printing things out. I have a little bit of a string, the item cost. Then I have a comma here because I'm no longer printing a string. I'm now going to print my variable. I'm printing the variable cost. And as you can see, that was the integer 2. All right, so if I run this code right now, it's just going to print out the item cost 2. Perfect. All right, what if we want to make that 2 into a money value? What if we wanted to print out the item cost $2? All right, so anytime you're using money values, you want to print it with a dollar sign and 2 places after the decimal. So I'm going to uncomment some of this code because right here, I'm printing out the exact same thing, but I'm using an F string. And since I'm using the F string, I can tell Python how many places I want to print after the decimal. First things first, when you create one of these F strings, you have to have a lowercase f as the very first thing when the parentheses open, right? This is before you're opening quotation marks. Now what we do is, when we want to print a variable, we no longer have to put this comma and then put the variable name. Instead, we can just have one string. So it opens here and it closes here. All right. And what we can do is wrap the variable name in a set of curly braces. All right. So if I didn't care about formatting and I just wanted to print out the item cost $2, this dollar sign right here, note that it's outside of the curly braces. That's going to go ahead and print the dollar sign in front of the variable. All right, so let's just run it like this, and let me just show you guys that it will print the same thing as the first print statement. All right, except we've got the dollar sign. So what I want to do now is put a little bit of formatting in here so that it will print 2 places after the decimal. Here's how you do it. Put a colon. That's just telling Python, hey, get ready because I'm about to throw some formatting at you. All right, we put a decimal 2 and a lowercase f. This is telling Python, put a decimal in there, print 2 places after the decimal, and by the way, that's a float value that you're formatting. All right, so it's as simple as that. Now when I print it or run it, it should have 2 places after the decimal, and it does. Beautiful. So this is how you always, moving forward, want to print out money values. All right. So we're going to do just a couple more examples of that. So I have a print statement here, and I'm using my many decimals variable this time. All right, so this is going to be the value that prints out. And I'm saying, hey, I want this value to have 4 decimal places. All right, this is one of the old school strings. This is how we did it the old way. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to print it and have many decimals only print 4 places after the decimal. All right, right now, let's just run it. I'm going to comment out some of these lines, and I'm going to show you guys that currently it's going to print all the places after the decimal, right? So let's do it. Give it a run. And it's got all these decimal places. We only want 4, right? So let's switch it up. What we need to do is put our little f at the very beginning. That tells Python that this is going to be a formatted string. All right. Now, we do not want to close up our string right here. We want to close up our string at the very end. We no longer need this comma. We get rid of that. And we need to wrap our variable name in a set of curly braces. All right. So we could print it just like this if we wanted to, and it would work, only it would give us all these decimal places. All right. So we're going to do the same thing that we did above. And this time we're going to tell Python to give us 4 places after the decimal. All right. So let's give it a run. And we've got 4 places, which is what we want. And keep in mind that it did round this last value. All right, it rounded up. Great. All right, so we're going to do the same thing again, only this time we're going to print it with 0 places after the decimal. So I'm just going to edit the string that I already have here to say 0 places after the decimal. And I am going to get rid of the 4 and put a 0 in there. All right. So now instead of having any places after the decimal, I shouldn't even have the decimal at all. I should just have the integer. All right, let's take a look. Let's give it a run. All right, beautiful. And please note that if I have a number with places after the decimal and then I get rid of the decimal places, it does round this whole number, this integer, right? Because 4.9 whatever rounds up to 5. So that's why I got the 5 there. All right, nice. Let me show you guys too, if you want to print a blank line, which you will sometimes because it will make your output look neater. So right here, I have this line that we just printed. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it down here. All right, so now I should have the same thing printing out twice. All right, look what happens if I don't have this empty print statement here. If I just run it, the lines print out one right on top of the other. All right, sometimes you're going to have a lot of output and you're going to want something in between the two to kind of break it up. So you can either do an empty print statement like that, or you can use the new line character. So the new line character goes inside of your string, all right? And I'm going to do it here because I want the new line to happen before all this text prints out. And what it looks like is this. I have to be inside the quotation mark. It's a backward slash, all right? Not the forward slash, the backward slash, and a little m, and that's it. All right, so now when I run it, I should still have a blank line in between my 2 lines of output, and I do. All right, nice. So let's move along here. I'm going to come up here, and for now, I'm just going to comment all this out. I can go to format and comment out the region. All right, nice. So let's see what we got next. We are going to talk about math expressions. All right, you guys did a little bit of math already in the module before this, but we're just going to reiterate how to create these mathematical expressions. All right, so I'm going to create a little bit of code that takes a temperature as Celsius and converts it to Fahrenheit and then prints out the result. All right, so first things first, I said that I was going to take a value, temperature in Celsius, right? And that's what I'm going to convert to Fahrenheit. So I'm going to get the temperature in Celsius from the user. All right, so this is my line of code right here that does that. My variable name is C for Celsius. And I do need to convert my input into some kind of numerical data type, right? And since the temperature can be like, I don't know, 35.5 or 39.7, right? If it can have a decimal, then we want to make it a float data. So that's what I've done here. Keep in mind, we won't know what the value of C is until the program runs and the user puts in that piece of information. Then we're going to use that variable inside of a mathematical calculation, all right? And this right here, this whole formula, I just got this off the internet, okay? I don't know off the top of my head what the formula is to convert the temperature. So I just went to Google. I Googled it and I found the formula. All right, so what does it do? It takes the Celsius temperature, which we got up here, and it multiplies it by 9/5, gets that value, and then it adds 32 to that value. All right, I did put the multiplication in parentheses because I wanted to make sure that it happened first before the addition. All right, and so once all of this is calculated, right, we got a value of C from the user, so that'll be plugged in here. We do the calculation, and then whatever the answer is, it's going to save it in this variable F. Right, so now we have F, which represents the temperature in Fahrenheit, and we still have the variable C, which represents the temperature in Celsius. All right, so what am I going to do after I've done the calculations? Well, I need to display the results. All right, and I'm going to use an F string to do it. So it should say the temperature in Celsius, degrees Celsius, is the temperature in Fahrenheit, degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so all I'm doing is using these variables here inside of my output string. All right, so let me make sure I need to comment out some of this. And let's give this a run and let's see if it does what we expect it to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and run it. And the first thing that happens is the user should be prompted to give the temperature in Celsius. I'm gonna say 20 degrees. Actually, let's put a float, let's make it a float, 20.5. All right, awesome. We don't see the calculation part because that happens behind the scenes, but we do see the print statement. And it says 20.5 degrees Celsius is 68.9 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, and I did go in and do the math and double check to make sure that that was correct, and it is. All right, so that's how you create mathematical expressions. Let's comment this out, and let's move on along. Now we're going to take a look at some dictionaries. All right, dictionary is going to be a data type. So data type, or I'm sorry, a data structure, meaning that this is one of the ways that we can hold our data within Python using a dictionary. Right? A dictionary is always going to be inside of curly braces, right? Curly brace, curly brace. I am assigning this dictionary back to a variable called capitals. All right, so if I have 3 different values inside of my dictionary here, you can see that each value consists of 2 pieces, a key and a value. So the key is on the left-hand side of the colon, and the value is on the right-hand side of the colon. All right, the keys must be unique. You cannot have 2 items in your dictionary that have the same key. All right, if I tried to go in here and I tried to create another item in the dictionary, and say I tried to use North Carolina again as my key, so if say I tried to do this, it's going to throw an error, okay? I don't know, just put whatever. Right? If I did that, it would throw an error, and it would say, hey, you have 2 keys in your dictionary that are the same, and that can't happen. All right, so let me take that out of there. And notice that, like I said, each part consists of a key, a colon, and a value, right? And then we've got a comma, and then we have the next key value pair, comma, and the next key value pair. All right, so we have 3 items total in this dictionary. So let's see how we can get a value out of the dictionary by using the key. All right, so what I did was I created a new variable over here called NC capital, and the value is going to be whatever the value is up here in our capitals dictionary at this given key. All right, so you put the name of the dictionary here and the name of the key here. What it's going to give you back and what it's going to save in this variable is the value associated with this key. All right, so let's give it a run, and we should be expecting it to print out Raleigh. All right, give it a run, make sure it does, and it does. Very nice. If we wanted to get back Charleston, we would put SC here. If we wanted to get back Virginia or Richmond, we would put VA here. All right, so let's move on along. What are we going to do now? We're going to add a new key value pair to the dictionary. All right, I'm going to comment out some of this. Anytime you want to add a new item to the dictionary, here's how you do it. The name of the dictionary, the name of the new key. equals, and then you have the actual value that you want associated with that key. All right, so that's going to add a new item to the dictionary where the key is GA and the value is Atlanta. And after I've added it in, I'm going to print out my dictionary just to make sure that the value is actually added. So let's give it a run. All right, we got it. There's our new key value pair. All right, moving along. We are going to figure out how to edit a value for a key that already exists. So we want to change something that already exists in the dictionary. All right. So what we want to do is we're going to pretend like we don't know what the capital of North Carolina is. And we're going to say, okay, go to the dictionary, find this key, and change the value to this unknown. All right. So let's do the same thing. I made the change, so it should edit the value for NC to unknown. I'm going to print the dictionary again, and let's make sure that that change went through. All right, and it did. So now the value for NC is going to be unknown instead of Raleigh. Let's comment these out and move along. All right, that's going to be it for the dictionaries. Let's move on to look at some lists. All right, so list is going to be, oh, we forgot one, apologies. What if we need to remove something from our dictionary? Let me come back up here. All right, I got to uncomment it out so it exists again. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to remove a key value pair from the dictionary, and we're going to do that using the delete keyword, DEL. All right, so you put DEL, you put a space, you put the name of the dictionary, and then you put only the key of the key value pair that you want to remove from the dictionary. All right, so now we're printing our dictionary one more time. If we give it a run, we should no longer see the NC key value pair. Uh-oh. Just a second. Disregard that, please. I was just missing a little something over here. All right, let's run it one more time and make sure that the NC key pair is not in the dictionary. And it is removed, which is exactly what we wanted. All right, now I can get rid of these. And now we can talk about lists. Alrighty, so lists are going to be one of the most commonly used data structures in Python. You will probably use lists forever as long as you code. All right, and all a list is a series of items, just like you would write a grocery list or something like that, just one item after the next, right? And the way we create these lists are square brackets. A list will always have square brackets. Now you can create a list like this that is empty with nothing in it. Or you can go ahead and create your list with values in it. So say I wanted to create one that already had values, I could say num list equals, I got my square brackets, and I can just start adding some values in here. All right, the values are separated by commas. So let's take a look at this monthly bills empty list that I have down here. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some information from the user. And always remember, if we get information from the user, we use the input function. I want these values to be saved as numbers, and I want the user to be able to put decimal numbers in there. All right, so I'm going to use floats because those are the numeric data types that allow decimals. All right, so I'm telling the user, hey, how much is your rent? Right, I'm converting it to a float, and then I'm saving it in this variable. Well, this part down here probably looks new to you. What this is doing is it's taking the variable that we just got in the line above, and it's appending or adding it to this list, monthly bills. Right? So that's how you add a value to a list. You put the name of the list, you put dot append, and then in a set of parentheses, you put whatever value or the variable that represents that value that you want to add into the list. So each one of these lines of code is asking the user for a piece of information. it's converting it to a float, and it's saving it in this variable. All right, and then after each time I do that, I am taking the value and I'm adding it to the list monthly bills. Right, I'm gonna do the same thing for food. I asked them, right, converted it to a float, put it in the variable, add it to the list. And I did the same thing down here for the power bill. All right, so by the time I'm done, my list that was empty now should have 1, 2, 3, 4 values in it. All right, so if I want to make sure that all those values actually went into my list, what I need to do is print out the list. So I just put print the name of the list. I'm gonna give it a run. All right, all that looks fine. So this is the code I'm gonna run right now. And it should ask us for 4 values. It should add them into the list, and then it should print our list out. Once again, apologies, get rid of that. We are up here and we're gonna give it a run. All right, so let's say 200, maybe 150, and 100 again. All right, so please disregard this down here. This is for something else, but it did print out our list, and it does have all 4 values in the list. And as you can see, because we converted them to floats, it added a 0.0 to the end of each one, which is perfectly fine. All right, so what are we going to do now? Let me just comment this stuff down here out so that it won't print out the next time we run the code. We're not quite there yet. We are going to find the highest and the lowest values in the list. For your homework, you'll need to make sure that when you print out these values, they have a $sign and 2 places after the decimal. I'm not going to do that in the example because I want you to do it in the homework. All right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to create a variable to hold the min value. And now I'm going to use a built-in Python function. All right, it's specific to lists, and it is called min. Inside of the parentheses, I'm going to pass in the name of the list that I want to get the minimum value of. All right. Keep in mind that the values in your list need to be numbers if you want to get the smallest one. All right. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a second variable, and this is going to hold the highest value in the list. And if the smallest function was called min, I bet you can guess that the highest function, or the function that returns the highest value, is called max. And I still need to pass in the name of my list. All right, so what I can do now is I can print these values. So I can print the min value, and I can print the max value. I'm going to make my life easier by just copying this, and I'm going to paste it in. So now when we run it, it should show us the minimum value and the maximum value of our list. And I'm going to go ahead and throw an empty print statement in there to give me a blank line. So let's give it a run. Okay, I'm just going to use 200 for those two. 10 will be the minimum and 500 will be the maximum. And let's see if we get those values back. Fantastic. This was our min. This was our max. Remember, in your homework, you'll need to print it out with a $sign in 2 places after the decimal. All right, we have another requirement here. We need to find the sum of all the values in the list. So I'm going to create a variable called total. And to it, I'm going to assign the sum function. And I need to pass the name of my list in here. As long as your list items are numbers, this should work just fine. And it should add up all the values in the list and save it in the total variable. And then I'm going to print it out. Right. We're going to do one more function real quick before we test it. And this is going to be a function that gives you back the number of items in the list. All right. So let's say num items equals. This function is called len for length. Give me the length of the list. And just like always, we've got to pass the list name in here. All right. So I'm going to print real quick. I'm actually going to print a string this time. I'm going to print an F string, and I'm going to say the list has, using my curly braces, num items, items. All right, so when it prints out, it's going to say the list has 4, hopefully, items, right? Because we did add only 4 items to the list. So let's give it a run and let's make sure that the total works and let's make sure that the length function works. All right, let's give it a run. And we've got to put some values in here. Let's say 100, 50, 75, and we will give it a 25. All right. So the lowest value is 25, that's correct. The highest value is 100, and it's saying the sum is 250. Let's add them up. 100, 150, and that equals 200, or another 100, right? So this is 100, this is 100, and this is 50. So we're at 250. That is perfect. And we see that our list has 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So this part here is also correct. In your homework, you're going to have to calculate the average of a list of numbers. You need to think about which of these functions you could use to do that. All right, and how you get the average of a set of numbers is you add up all the values and you divide by the number of items. All right, so think about how you can use those 2 functions there to get that done. All right, I'm going to comment out this and we are almost done. I've got a few more examples of lists and then we will be done with this. All right, so we use those couple functions to get the sum, the min, the max, all that, but we don't know how to remove things from a list or how to get the values back out of the list. All right, so let me comment this out and we are going to talk about exactly how to do those things. All right, so now we're down here and we're going to talk about list indexing. So each item in a list has an index associated with it. And what that means is it's that specific item's position in the list, all right? Python does not start counting at 1. Python and almost all programming languages start counting at 0. All right, so when we look at this list here called classes, which is a list of strings, the first item in the list is at index 0. This is index 1, 2, 3, 4. We always start counting at 0. All right. So if we want to get something, a value out of the list, like say we wanted to get the 3rd item in the list, which if we're counting for us, the 3rd item would be history. All right. But the index is not the same as the 3rd item. So let's go ahead and print out the item. Let's just go one at a time. All right, so let's put our name of our list. Now I'm going to put a set of square brackets and I'm going to pass in the index for the item that I want. All right, so we said the thing at index 0 was the first thing in the list, which is the string calculus. All right, so I'm going to comment some of this code out down here so that we don't get a bunch of random output. And we're going to make sure that when we write this print statement, when we execute it, that it gives us back calculus. All right, and it does. That's awesome. So if we printed the item at index 1, we should get band, right? Let's just make sure. We do, all right. And so if we wanted history, this is index 0, 1, 2. So if we put in index 2, we should get history. And we do, all right. So hopefully that's pretty easy for you guys to understand. We just start at 0 and then we count along until we get to the end, right? Those are indexes. So let's keep it moving and let's figure out how to remove something from the list by its index. All right, so remember before we were just getting the values back out of the list. Now we want to remove something. All right, so we're going to remove the item at index 3. So which one would that be? 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to remove the string art from the list. How you do that is put the name of the list, dot pop. And then inside of the parentheses, you pass the index of the item that you want to remove. All right, so let's give it a run. We're going to print the list. After we remove the item at index 3, it should remove art, and then the rest of the items should still be in the list. Let's give it a run. There we go. Perfect. Got rid of art. All right. So keep in mind that if we remove that item from the list, now classes no longer looks like this, right? So you have to just remember or print out, keep in mind that you got rid of the item at index 3, right? So the list no longer looks like this. The list now is missing the art item. Let's keep that in mind. All right. So we are almost done here. We're going to figure out how to remove something from the list, not by its index, but by its actual value. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the item from the list by its value, and the value is going to be calculus. So we're going to get rid of this item. All right, and the syntax to do that is the name of the list, dot remove, and then in parentheses, put the actual value of the item that you want to remove. Remember that we have a list of strings, so the value that we want to remove is also a string, so it needs to have the quotation marks around it. So now when we print the list, the value calculus should be gone. All right, and it is. All right, guys, so that's going to be it for this lecture. There will most likely be some separate videos that will walk you through the labs.